Good evening. In a world where stories of corruption and graft often dominate headlines, a simple act of integrity in Ghana has captured global attention. Tonight, we dive deep into the story of three police officers, a roadside discovery, and a bag that has become a symbol of something much larger. I'm your host, and this is Kenya News Update today. Our story begins in the early hours of Saturday morning, February 14th, 2026. At the Hansua barrier near Tekeman, Ghana, three police officers reporting for duty encountered an unassuming sight, a Ghana Musco bag abandoned by the roadside. This distinctive checked bag, known across West Africa for its durability and ubiquity, had apparently fallen from a speeding vehicle. What they found inside would test their character in ways they never imagined. Inside that bag was 85,000 Ghanaian cedis. That's approximately 2.5 million Kenyan shillings, or 18,500 US dollars. For context, the average annual salary for a Ghanaian police officer is 25,000 Ghanaian cedis. This discovery represented more than 3 years' worth of salary for each officer. Yet, without hesitation, they reported the find to their superiors and began the process of returning the money to its rightful owner. Let's examine what makes this story so remarkable. First, consider the officers themselves: Sergeant Samuel Afori, age 42 with 15 years of service; Corporal Ama Mensah, age 35 with 8 years of service; and Constable Kwame Sant, age 28 with just 3 years on the force. They represent different generations of Ghana's police service, yet they responded with unified integrity. Now, let's look at the broader context. According to Transparency International's 2025 Corruption Perceptions Index, Ghana scored 43 out of 100, placing it 75th out of 180 countries. While this represents improvement from their 2024 score of 41, corruption remains a significant challenge. The police service specifically has faced criticism, with a 2025 Afrobarometer survey finding that 48% of Ghanaians believe most or all police officers are corrupt. Against this backdrop, the actions of these three officers become even more significant. But let's examine the debate around this story. Perspective 1. This is a powerful example of institutional reform working. Ghana's police service has implemented several anti-corruption initiatives in recent years, including mandatory integrity training for all recruits since 2023, anonymous reporting systems established in 2024, and a 30% salary increase for officers implemented in January 2025. Perspective 2 argues this is an isolated incident that doesn't reflect systemic change. Critics point to data from Ghana's Economic and Organized Crime Office, which reported 127 cases of police corruption in 2025 alone, resulting in only 12 convictions. They note that while high-profile cases like this make headlines, everyday corruption continues to affect ordinary citizens. Let's examine some comparative data. In Kenya, a similar incident occurred in November 2025, when a traffic police officer in Nairobi returned 1.2 million Kenyan shillings found in an abandoned vehicle. That officer received a commendation but no financial reward. In Nigeria, the Ghana Musco bag has a different cultural association. It's famously linked to mass deportations in the 1980s, making this Ghanaian story particularly poignant. Now, let's consider the financial implications. The 85,000 Ghanaian cedis represents significant money in the Ghanaian context. To put this in perspective, it could pay school fees for 85 university students for one semester at the University of Ghana. It could purchase approximately 17,000 loaves of bread at current market prices, or it could fund the construction of 2 boreholes in rural communities. The officer's decision becomes even more remarkable when we consider their personal circumstances. Sergeant Afori has 3 children in secondary school, with annual fees totaling 12,000 Ghanaian cedis. Corporal Mensah is supporting her aging parents, with monthly medical expenses of 800 Ghanaian cedis. Constable Asant is saving for his wedding, planned for December 2026, with estimated costs of 15,000 Ghanaian cedis. Let's examine what happened after the discovery. The officers immediately contacted their supervisor, Inspector General James Usu, who arrived at the scene within 30 minutes. A formal inventory was conducted, documenting 85 bundles of 1,000 Ghanaian cedi notes. The money was photographed, weighed at 2.3 kilograms, and transported to the district headquarters under armed guard. The search for the owner began immediately. Police reviewed traffic camera footage from the Hansua barrier, identifying 47 vehicles that passed between 4 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. on February 14th. Through painstaking investigation, they traced the bag to a businessman traveling from Kumasi to Tamale. Mr. Kofi Anakai, 52, owner of a construction materials company, had been transporting the money for a land purchase. When contacted, Mr. Anakai reported he hadn't even realized the money was missing. The bag had been placed in the trunk of his Toyota Land Cruiser, and the latch had apparently failed during the journey. He offered the officers a 5,000 Ghanaian Cedi reward, which they initially declined before accepting after pressure from their superiors and the public. Now, let's examine the public reaction. Ghanaian social media exploded with praise for the officers. The hashtag Ghana Must Go Integrity trended for 72 hours, generating over 500,000 mentions. President Nana Akufo-Addo personally called the officers to commend them, while the Inspector General of Police announced they would receive accelerated promotions. But not all reactions were positive. Some commentators questioned why such a simple act of honesty should receive such extraordinary attention. They argued that returning found property should be the norm, not the exception. Others noted the disparity between the celebration and the everyday struggles of underpaid police officers across West Africa. Let's look at some comparative integrity metrics. According to the 2025 World Bank Governance Indicators, Ghana scores 55.2 for control of corruption, compared to Nigeria's 28.7 and Kenya's 45.3. However, when we examine police-specific trust metrics, the numbers tell a different story. Only 34% of Ghanaians express a lot of trust in police, compared to 41% in Rwanda and 29% in Nigeria. Now, let's consider the Ghana Must Go bag itself as a cultural symbol. Originally manufactured in China but popularized across West Africa in the 1970s, these bags have carried everything from market goods to personal belongings to, in some notorious cases, illicit cash. Their durability and capacity, typically 100 liters, make them both practical and symbolic. In recent years, some African designers have sought to reclaim the bag's image. In Lagos, a fashion collective launched Ghana Must Go Reimagined in 2024, creating high-end versions that sell for $300 to $500. In Accra, artists have used deconstructed bags in installations commenting on migration and identity. This incident adds another layer to the bag's complex symbolism. Let's examine what happens next for the officers. Beyond their 5,000 Ghanaian Cedi, reward approximately 1 month's salary for each, they've received numerous other offers. A Ghanaian bank has offered them free banking services for life. A telecommunications company has provided free data packages for 1 year, and several educational institutions have offered scholarships for their children. But the most significant development may be institutional. The Ghana Police Service has announced it will establish an integrity award in the officer's honor, with an annual ceremony recognizing exemplary conduct. The first awards will be presented in December 2026, with a cash prize of 20,000 Ghanaian Cedis for the top recipient. Now, let's consider the broader implications for police reform in Africa. Many countries face similar challenges: underfunded services, low salaries, and public distrust. Kenya's police reforms, initiated in 2018, have shown mixed results. The National Police Service reported a 15% increase in public trust between 2023 and 2025, but incidents of corruption continue to surface. In Nigeria, police reform has been a contentious issue. The 2020 End-SARS protests highlighted deep-seated problems, and while the government established a police trust fund in 2021, implementation has been slow. Current President Bola Tinubu has promised comprehensive reform, but concrete results remain elusive. Let's examine some successful models. Rwanda's police force consistently ranks among Africa's least corrupt, with a 2025 Transparency International score of 68 out of 100. Key factors include competitive salaries. Officers earn approximately 50% more than their Ghanaian counterparts, rigorous vetting processes, and strong accountability mechanisms. Botswana provides another example. With a police corruption perception score of 65 out of 100, their success stems from several factors: recruitment from top secondary school graduates, continuous professional development, and a strong internal affairs division that investigates misconduct independently. Now, back to our Ghanaian officers. Their story raises important questions about motivation and ethics. Were they motivated by personal integrity, fear of consequences, religious or moral convictions? In interviews, all three cited their training and desire to do the right thing. Sergeant Afori specifically mentioned his children. "I want them to be proud of their father." Let's consider what psychological research tells us about such decisions. Studies in behavioral economics suggest that honesty often depends on context more than character. The nudge theory, developed by Nobel laureate Richard Thaler, suggests that small environmental cues can significantly influence ethical behavior. In this case, the officer's immediate reporting to a supervisor created accountability that may have reinforced their initial impulse to do the right thing. Now, let's examine the economic argument. Some analysts suggest that better compensation is the key to reducing police corruption. They point to Singapore, where police officers earn salaries competitive with the private sector, resulting in minimal corruption. However, other factors, including strong institutions and severe penalties, also play crucial roles. In Ghana, police salaries have increased by 30% since January 2025, part of broader public sector reforms. The government has committed to further increases of 15% annually through 2028. Whether this will significantly reduce corruption remains to be seen, but early indicators are promising. Let's look at some numbers. According to Ghana Police Service data, reports of officer misconduct decreased by 22% in the first quarter of 2026 compared to the same period in 2025. Citizen satisfaction with police services increased from 48% to 56% during this period. While correlation doesn't equal causation, the trends are encouraging. Now, let's consider the counterargument. Some experts warn against over-celebrating individual acts of integrity while systemic problems persist. They note that Ghana's police service still lacks adequate resources. Only 40% of stations have reliable internet access, and vehicle-to-officer ratios remain at 1 to 15, well below international standards. Furthermore, accountability mechanisms need strengthening. The Police Professional Standards Bureau investigates complaints but lacks independence, reporting directly to the Inspector General. Reform advocates call for an independent oversight body similar to Kenya's Independent Policing Oversight Authority, established in 2011. Let's examine what ordinary Ghanaians think. In a street interview conducted by our team in Accra, responses were mixed. "These officers give us hope," said teacher Abina Aser, 42. "But we need systemic change, not just heroes." Businessman Yao Boteng, 55, was more skeptical. "One good story doesn't fix years of problems." Now, let's consider the international perspective. This story has resonated beyond Africa's borders. The BBC, CNN, and Al Jazeera have all covered it, often contrasting it with negative stereotypes about African corruption. Some commentators see it as part of a broader Afro-optimism narrative, highlighting positive developments across the continent. However, this framing has its critics. Nigerian scholar Dr. Chidi Anselm Odinkalu argues that focusing on individual stories can obscure structural issues. "We celebrate the exception while normalizing the problematic rule," he wrote in a recent editorial. True progress requires institutional transformation. Let's examine what institutional transformation might look like. Comprehensive police reform typically involves several components: recruitment and vetting, training and development, compensation and benefits, accountability and oversight, and community relations. Ghana has made progress on some fronts but lags on others. For example, while training has improved, recruitment processes remain vulnerable to political interference. A 2025 audit found that 15% of recent recruits had connections to political figures. The Police Council has promised to address this, but concrete changes have been slow to materialize. Now, let's return to our three officers. Their story continues to develop. They've been invited to speak at police academies across West Africa. The African Union has recognized them with its annual Integrity Award. And perhaps most importantly, they've inspired similar acts. In the month since their story broke, Ghanaian media has reported 17 similar incidents of public officials returning found money or property. This integrity cascade effect is perhaps the most significant outcome. Behavioral scientists note that publicizing ethical behavior can create social norms that encourage similar conduct. By celebrating these officers, Ghana may be creating new expectations for public servants. Let's examine some final numbers. Since the incident, applications to Ghana's police academy have increased by 35%. Public donations to funds supporting officers' welfare have reached 250,000 Ghanaian cedis, and citizen reports of police misconduct have increased by 40%, suggesting growing confidence in accountability mechanisms. In conclusion, the story of three police officers and a Ghana must-go bag is more than just a feel-good anecdote. It's a lens through which we can examine broader issues of governance, integrity, and reform. It raises difficult questions about how societies cultivate ethics, reward virtue, and build institutions that discourage corruption. As we've seen tonight, perspectives differ. Some see this as evidence of progress, others as masking deeper problems. What's undeniable is that, in a world often cynical about public institutions, these officers' actions have sparked important conversations and perhaps inspired change. Their story reminds us that integrity often appears in ordinary moments, that character is revealed in choices rather than circumstances, and that sometimes the most powerful symbols emerge from the most unexpected places, like a checked bag by a roadside at dawn. This has been Kenya News Update today. Subscribe to Kenya News Update today for more in-depth analysis of stories shaping our world. Thank you for watching, and good night.